Hey everybody, Jason Burmis here, and I wanted to go over the James Patterson interview at Fox. Why did I want to do this? Well, James Patterson is the most selling fiction author in the United States, I think the last almost 20 years. I'm pretty sure he superseded Stephen King by quite a lot. And because he lived in Palm Beach, he decided to write a non-fiction novel. And it was about who? Jeffrey Epstein. He did not do this alone. He hired a couple of hard-hitting private eyes. And Filthy Rich was actually one of the sources, one of the best sources I used in a video I did a couple years back for WRC. So it's called Billionaires Revealed, but that was, trying to trick the algorithm and whatever. It had an Epstein name before. And it's about 13 minutes long, and I relied heavily on Filthy Rich by James Patterson, okay? It was just an excellent read, and it had a lot of information you weren't finding elsewhere. Now, yesterday, when Acosta had to give his resignation with Trump by his side, Trump actually mentioned James Patterson of the Palm Beach area, the great James Patterson, kind of exonerating him. But we've been talking about this for quite some time, the falling out with Epstein and Trump, but we've also been extremely honest about their relationship prior and reported what is out there. And later today, I'm going to do just a full-on Epstein update on everything new that's out there, all the new stuff, the new allegations, what's going on with the trial. We talked about a lot of that yesterday with Titus Frost, but we're definitely going to get even further into that. So without further ado, James Patterson, best-selling author, launches this book in 2016. Almost nobody knows about it. It should have been headline news everywhere. This also further shows the media complicity in trying to hide this story for years.
I'm joined now by best-selling author James Patterson, who wrote Filthy Rich, the Billionaire's Sex Scandal. Mr. Patterson, most people know you from all of your amazing works of fiction and every airport, and everybody has read this. This was nonfiction.
Yeah.
And why did you decide to write this?
What drew me into this is, one, I live in Palm Beach. That was a little piece. But the bigger piece is, you see how upset people are now that they hear this story, the injustice, but also what happened to these kids. Allegedly, maybe 100 kids, maybe more than that.
So allegedly 100 kids, maybe more than that. Again, notice, by the way, his Alex Cross is one of the bigger ones, got made into a major motion picture. But again, he had this out in 2016. All right, that was 3 years ago. It might have been in October, so not quite 3 years ago, which means he was working on it for years, which means even more people knew. And it's really interesting. He's about to tell you that they were going to do a documentary film first, but he's like, no, I want to write a book. And, again, there's a lot of great researchers out there. We had Derek Bros on earlier this week. He's done an amazing documentary on Epstein. But let's go back to Patterson.
Young girls. And the people that I got involved with, Tim Malloy was a journalist down there, John Connolly, who was involved with Vanity Fair, was an investigative reporter. They felt this hurt and this pain and whatever right from 2006, and it never went away and it never got solved. And they just felt it was such a terrible thing. And then I said, well, you know what? We were originally going to do a documentary movie, and I said, no, I want to do a book.
And so you hired investigators to dig into this.
Yeah, we had 3 nasty, heavy-duty private eyes who went around and dug up as much as we could.
And from that...
now, this book came out in 2016.
2016, and so you had all this reporting done beforehand. Yeah. Of course, people have brought up Bill Clinton, former president. Let me read to you part of his statement.
Now, let's just stop this. You know what? Let's just type in Bill Clinton, James Patterson, because they've toured together. So, we got to take this with a grain of salt. Perhaps they didn't find anything out there, but here it is. The president is missing. The book that they did together, they were on tour. He's going to kind of exonerate him here. He's going to act like, oh, well, nobody knew. Well, remember, Ellen Barkin, who traveled with Ghislaine Maxwell and Epstein, said Ghislaine Maxwell bragged to her that she flew around and pimped girls out. I would imagine that a lot of this is pushed back. And with Epstein's lawyers claiming that he helped start the Clinton initiative, now is the time to try to spin the least amount of involvement with Epstein.
He says he's not spoken to Epstein in well over a decade and has never been to Little St. James Island, Epstein's ranch in New Mexico, or his residence in Florida. But you did have Joe Lockhart saying this on CNN just a little bit ago, talking about the number of flights being much larger than the number that the Clintons said last night. Let's watch that.
Sure.
On the Clinton matter, I stay in touch with the foundation, and I know, to clear up the trips versus the flights, I think the number was 26 or 27. Each of these trips, and I've been on many of these trips where you go to Asia or you go to Africa, and each flight is counted. So each trip will be 6 or 7 different flights.
So let's stop it there. So far, we have 26 times confirmed. Remember, we only have a partial flight log from one pilot. And apparently, the Maxwell flight logs where she flew, they may or may not exist. But in the Dershowitz testimony, at least what I've seen, and there's a lot more, but I only read 27 pages of it. It's much longer. I got to find the whole thing. But in that testimony, Bradley Edwards, who beat Epstein, the lawyer that beat Epstein, names two other pilots, and asks about the flight logs on those. So we need all these flight logs. So let's say he's telling the truth. By the way, thank you so much, Ports Film Co-op. I'm not going to read it, but it's kind of funny. Here's the deal. If you look at that, say 6 or 7, let's give him 6. So what do we have, 26 times? So that's at least 6+ trips. Okay, so probably 6+ trips with Epstein that we know about. And he's claiming that he's never been to the New Mexico residence or Little St. James Island. I think that still has yet to be proven, one way or the other.
I know most of the Clinton circle. Jeffrey Epstein's not part of it.
And then you write in the book, for Epstein, getting on that plane with Clinton was more like a moment in Caddyshack, the one in which the groundhog peeks out from his hole in the golf course. From therein, Jeffrey Epstein was like the mole in a game of whack-a-mole. It was only a matter of time before he'd be caught. Was this sort of an open secret, what was happening down in Palm Beach? Or here in New York
No, I don't think people knew. I mean, I think people who were saying they had no idea, I believe it.
You believe Bill Clinton didn't know?
Oh, absolutely.
See, absolutely. I absolutely believe. And I'm not saying that everybody knew. But, again, I think when Trump found out and it involved underage girls, it got a lot different. Because, again, we did the report, and I'm going to do a full-on report. There's claims out there now that Trump and Epstein had a private party at Mar-a-Lago prior to the falling out that they're going to talk about. And I think it was 28 models were there at the party. It's almost like an audition for Trump and billionaires. And again, these are the allegations. Jason Burmis isn't saying this. You can look it up yourself. But that is supposedly the first time that he met Melania. And there is no doubt that they did all travel together. So, again, I understand Patterson and trying to distance himself. And I think Malloy was at one of the hearings. And he did an interview outside the courtroom where he also said Clinton was involved, but mentioned a lot that Ken Starr may have been. Let's see.
Absolutely, and I know Trump didn't know. Nobody.
President Trump said earlier.
I'm bringing friends of mine are coming, and they live on the street. And they didn't know.
They didn't know.
No, who would know?
No,
this?
I can understand that.
Yeah.
How do you think Jeffrey Epstein actually made his money? That seems to be another mystery.
That's one of the things that nobody has been able to figure out. That, and I mean, look, how did he get a teaching job at Dalton with no college degree? That's impossible, but he did it.
President Trump said earlier that he had a falling out with Epstein about 15 years ago. Do you know what that was about?
Well, I know that there were some complaints about Epstein at Mar-a-Lago, and also I spoke to the head of the spa there, and she said that I said, "Did you ever meet Epstein?" She said, "Oh yes." She said he would come and he was inappropriate with some of the younger women there, and she said, "I went to Mr. Trump and Trump threw him out of the club."
So there we go. So that's that version. It was Trump, and maybe it was one of his underlings, and supposedly, it was a daughter of one of the members of Mar-a-Lago. Again, you'd have to read the book, and there's several different accounts of this, but it all comes down to eventually Epstein does get kicked out by Trump.
Kevin Spacey said this. This is in the book. Epstein's flown Bill Clinton to Africa on a private jet, not the Gulfstream he owns, but his Boeing 727, customized with its own trading floor so that the former president could promote his various and worthy causes. Just for fun, Chris Tucker, the comedian, Clinton's pal, Kevin Spacey, had tagged along for the ride. And because you've done all this investigative work, do you think that even though you say there are possibly 100 victims that we're talking about, that none of these people knew?
I don't think they did. And why would they? Look, I mean, did anybody know about Matt Lauer?
Right.
Yes, absolutely. Everybody knew about Matt Lauer. 100%. Matt Lauer had a lock on his door, and he even had, I think, like a button underneath. Yes, everybody knew about Matt Lauer. You're being disingenuous here, James Patterson. And when you talk about a predator like Spacey, let's not forget, Spacey just got out of his last lawsuit somehow, probably paid the guy off, but go check it out. He was out in Scotland Yard in London recently on 6 new allegations. Thank you very much, Tiffany Keene. Just a little something to help continue your work. Keep it up, please. Thank you so much for the super chat. Really do appreciate it. So let's continue.
I doubt it. I doubt it. Did they know about
Charlie Rose? What about Harvey Weinstein? I mean,
everybody knew about that too. You see, again, this is where I have a problem. Listen, Patterson did some great work in this book. The book, if you want to know about this case, the book is a must-read. It's not that long. You probably bust through it in a couple nights if you're rigorous and you're a decent reader. And it's excellently sourced, and there's material there again. Now you're seeing it start to circulate, but it certainly wasn't out in 2016. It's a very good book, but look, he's trying to whitewash the narrative of the power structure that Epstein was working with. And let's not forget Vicky Ward's information that apparently when Acosta went to the Trump transition team, he was asked about Epstein. And apparently, allegedly, Acosta said he was told Epstein was intelligence and it was above his pay grade. Back off. Remember, he was asked about this in the initial press conference and he refused to answer the question.
Well, I don't know if they knew exactly, but they certainly knew that there were issues there.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is a fascinating book here. So this is the nonfiction book that you wrote. In the break, you told me that you think that this whole scandal is the worst of the Me Too movement. Why?
I think, well, you know, whatever happened with Cosby is terrible stuff with
Harvey.
Same thing, but they were adults, so it was horrifying. But you know, these are girls. These are, and you know, allegedly hundreds of girls. And the Palm Beach police had, you know, 20, 30 interviews.
So you have these.
And by the way, let's just say this is not the Me Too movement. That's why I have it hashtag them too, and that's what my. You know, not only Epstein, the majority of it is now Epstein in that playlist, but you have R. Kelly in there, who's just picked up by Homeland Security. You have the dealings with Dershowitz. You have some Disney dealings and Nickelodeon dealings in there as well. And some other ones that are pretty damn disturbing. And I think it is a tragedy that we have not treated this with the seriousness that the media treated the tabloid style because, oh, Bill Cosby and, oh, Harvey Weinstein. Remember, all of them were pretty much of age, although Harvey Weinstein had allegations by Kate Beckinsale that he tried stuff with her when she was 17. All right? This is much more important. I mean, you look at the Catholic Church scandal and how that keeps exploding. It doesn't stop. The stuff out in Pennsylvania is mind-blowing. And if you don't think that these networks interconnect. They absolutely interconnect. Sacha Baron Cohen, you know, he goes out to shoot his show and he's out in Vegas trying to get a young boy and he thinks it's going to be a funny joke and the guy's going to freak out. And no, the concierge is going to get him a young boy and he knows who to put him in contact with. So he goes to the FBI and nothing's done. Go look that one up. Did that story about 6 months ago. So it's not a Me Too movement. It's them too. It's our children.
In the book, yeah. I mean, the Miami Herald did a great job, and that's terrific. A lot of that was in the book. The one thing that they did get the girls as women, as 30-year-old women, and that's interesting. In the book, we have the police interviews of them when they were kids and what happened, and that's devastating. And the police had it all.
Of course, they did.
So then you have to presume that Alex Acosta, then the U.S. attorney, now the labor secretary, that he had it too?
The rumors, yeah, oh, for sure.
For sure. Oh, for sure. Oh, for sure. Of course he had it. Of course he had all their statements. Of course he had the videos of them telling people what Epstein had done in graphic detail. 100%. 100%. You see how some of this does contradict the Trump administration narrative of everything?
For sure, they had the evidence. And that's why the police department was blown away when they heard, and they heard like everybody else after it was a done deal, that there was a deal. They were like, this is impossible. You can't have thrown away all this evidence.
Do you think it's because Epstein was so rich and powerful that he had the best lawyers?
The rumors were, for what they're worth, one, that the prosecutors were frightened of the team that Epstein had put together.
Oh, come on. Sure, they're frightened, but that doesn't mean, he's going to try to, again, whitewash the situation. They didn't want an OJ situation where Dershowitz wins again. Because Dershowitz, by the way, aside from being a friend of Epstein, was also one of the lawyers on the Dream Team, the OJ Dream Team that got him off, and they didn't want a spectacle. However, because of the nature of, OJ and his celebrity, that was the reason that was the spectacle. Don't get me wrong, we love big trials in this country, and this would have been a big one. But to think with all the evidence that they wouldn't have been able to defeat that legal team is utter nonsense.
With Dershowitz and Starr, and they didn't want another OJ, and who would? The second thing was, I think the defense had said they would eviscerate these girls on the stand. They were kids. They would paint them as prostitutes, and it would be a horror show.
That's great. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not great, but look what we just had with the Nexium scandal, right? First of all, one of Ranieri's youngest victims was not allowed to testify, but one who was abused when she was 15 was allowed to testify, and it was powerful. And you know what? I mean, I don't think that the masses out there know her identity. I don't think it's been strewn through the mud. And don't get me wrong, Dershowitz is sleazy, and he would have probably tried to put it out into the public. He's not wrong. He would have tried these things. But at the end of the day, who is going to side with a pedophile billionaire rubbing elbows with the upper echelons of the education community, the political community, the entertainment community? Nobody. Everybody gets it.
But then the other controversial thing is that the plea agreement is kept from the victim. So they don't know that all of this is happening.
Right.
And that's a big bone of contention.
Huge. And also that they give immunity to everyone attached, all the different people that were out procuring for Epstein.
Yeah, so it's not like no one knew.
Everybody.
Like we talked earlier in the first block about that these famous people that knew Epstein, that maybe they didn't know anything. But there were people who were helping him, and they got immunity. How is that?
That's another part of the justice that astounds people.
Yeah, and it astounds me that, again, you try to make that leap of logic that even though that's going on, and we've shown you in previous videos, I'm not going to bring it up, but, excuse me, Jane Doe, 43, who I think is Sarah Ronsom, she talks about not only Leslie Groff and Sarah Kellen and Marisa Malikova, it's close to that. I'm not sure exactly that last name. But then also the various assistants, butlers, housekeepers, pilots, etc., that were all helping Epstein on one way or another. And now with this latest indictment that's New York 2002 to 2005 involving with that residence and the Florida residence, 3 of those employees have flipped as witnesses.
And it should.
What's the mood in Palm Beach right now about this?
It's interesting. Down there, after the book came out in 2016, I had hundreds and hundreds of people come up and say, thank you for writing that book. As opposed to, we don't really want to have that story out about the town.
Exactly.
It really wasn't about the town because nobody knew. I mean, you can't do something like that. If anybody knows, I mean, I have friends who are in town right now. They live on that street. They didn't know. They live like two
There's
houses
no one
away.
In the world of publishing today that can end a story like you. But how do you think this is going to end?
This is no accident that we got him. That's the way the story.
But how do you?
This is no. You know what? Again, they talked about independent journalists, and don't get me wrong, the Miami Herald is there, but Patterson's done some great work. I give props to James Patterson for this. I think he whitewashed the Clinton angle 100%. That's a little bit upsetting. But guys, you can't win them all. I think this is a good job by him. I think that, again, more and more is going to come out. I recommend the book. I want to remind people that I did I did back in the day for WRC. I did a whole origin story, and a lot of that information comes from Patterson's book. So if you go over, you follow me on Twitter, it's the top tweet right now, I believe, or it's in the top tweet. Guys, I'm doing 3, 4, 5, 6, sometimes 7 videos a day. I think we pumped out 5 yesterday. Did we do 5? We did 4 or 5 on important subjects, because that's how we do it here, guys. We do videos that matter. And if you like it, please subscribe. Join the Burmese Brigade right now. Thumbs this video up, share it, ring the bell for notifications so you can join me live, do a walk and talk every day as well. And look, we're almost there. We're less than $400 away with 4 days to go on the GoFundMe. I can't thank you guys enough. We're going to do this. I'm going to do it again next month. And like I said, as the channel grows, when we hit 30K, we're almost at 25K. I'm going to do the 25K AMA, answer any questions out there. That's probably coming this weekend. I think I'm less than 100 subscribers away, so definitely sub if you're new. But when we get to the point where I can get to 30K, we can have members, I can do merch, and we can bring this up a little more, I'm definitely going to be going on location at least once a month. 2 very important places and big, important stories that go beyond the left-right paradigm. You're never going to get that nonsense from me. It's about right and wrong. It's about bringing monsters like Epstein's and others to justice. So make sure you're subscribed. And guys, thank you so much. I'll see you all on the flip side.